You're listening to Design Between the Lines, the only design and home furnishings podcast where we talk with the movers and shakers, industry innovators, and lifetime legends of the home furnishings industry. It's here that I get a chance to sit and chat with the influencers shaping the industry into what it is today. This episode of Design Between the Lines is presented by International Market Centers. IMC is the world's largest operator of premier space for the furniture, gift, home decor, rug, and apparel industries, and operates nearly 20 million square feet of world-class exhibition space in High Point, Atlanta, and Las Vegas. We're back with Dawn, Brinson, and Christi Barbour, where we continue our conversation about marketing and design in the home furnishings industry today. In addition, we're going to talk about High Point Discovered, High Point's growth as a destination for design, and great advice for students and those who want to start a career in the home furnishings industry. So, we talked a little bit about it at the end about COVID and how that affected your businesses. We talked just before that about the harmony between the creative side of things that you bring and your business goals and how those harmonize, or how you harmonize them within your own businesses. So now I'm going to take it one step further. I'm going to ask you, in both of your sides of this business, how do you stay ahead of the curve in your business? How do you find ways of staying ahead of that curve, both in design and in marketing? I would say, why don't you start with that, Dawn? It's a big one. I just dropped a bomb, so go for it.
Sure.
Pick that bomb up.
Sure. I'll pick up what you're throwing down. It's a myriad of things. It goes back to the fact that I love research. My background is actually in the sciences. And so taking research and delving into it, figuring out how we can apply things that are from outside of our industry into our industry, because there are a lot of other places that are doing interesting and innovative work. So how might we be able to apply that? I have this ideation where I can see disparate things. You give me a weird puzzle of three unconnected things, and I figure out how to put them together. So to me, that's a real challenge and a lot of fun. But I think from an industry standpoint, we need to constantly be alert to what's happening everywhere, because we no longer live and work in silos, whether it's what's happening on a global scale economically, culturally, in fashion, in technology, in art. I think that all of those things can bring new interest and new adaptation to what we do as marketers. Mm-hmm. My clients also push us to find new ways to do things, not because they want to see something else, but because we don't want to be doing the same thing with every client all the time. Yeah. We want to present things that are new. So, for example, attending different kinds of conferences, many not related directly to furniture, but to other elements of art and culture and design. Looking at different kinds of trade shows and attending trade shows that are not here in the United States. I know Christi went to Maison in Paris not too terribly long ago. And a couple of years before that, I did Maison in Cologne. And, they're just a different approach to things. And they open up your ideas and your eyes to things. Very much the way designers, furniture designers often will, sort of take a field study of a place or a particular element of something in order to dive really broadly and deeply into a particular design that they want to approach. We do the same thing. So staying ahead of the curve is actually part of the fun for us.
Absolutely. Well, Christi, staying ahead of the curve, your showroom design business, you really have to almost show that curve to folks coming in to use those showrooms to sell furniture. So tell me more about how that staying ahead of the curve in the design business is all about.
Yes, I would say it's kind of like the thrill of the chase, right?
Yes.
I consider myself an education junkie. The more knowledge, the better. And just like Dawn, this is where so many parallels come in. We're going to really kind of say the same thing in different capacities on a regular basis to these answers. Anything that we can see as designers, so not just the design industry, because if we're just looking at what other designers are doing, we're not being fresh, we're not setting that trend, we are not ahead of the curve, as you said. And so we're looking to other industries. What's the jewelry industry doing? What's going on in the arts world? What's going on in the fashion world? What's going on in electronics? So we're looking at all of those things, and that's where my news junkie hat comes on, because I'm constantly craving that information. Yeah. But I'm also an education junkie. And so, groups like mastermind groups and coaches and traveling the world, having mentors, all of those things help me and help our team, where we all work independently and together as a group, look for what is next and what could be next. And so every year we put together a trend report of what we're seeing in those worlds, in the fashion world, in the arts world, in culture in general, and how is that impacting, or how could that impact design. And we share that with our furniture manufacturers and some of our other clients. So it's very exciting to share that. And then 18 months, 24 months later, look at the product development course of where they've taken their product and see the influence of what we had shared in those trend reports. So that to me is really exciting and part of how we stay ahead. So much as Dawn mentioned, it's getting out to see, to observe, to learn. All of those things impact it.
Two key words I pulled from both of you. One is research, and the other is education. And frankly, they go hand in hand. Your relationship with High Point is pretty significant. And I want to say High Point as a design destination is a feeling, something you want to see happen. Tell me a little bit about your relationship with High Point and its role, hopefully, as you see it as a future design destination, and not just twice a year for markets, but all year long.
Yes, I fully expect and believe that we will see High Point be the destination, and not, as you said, 2 times a year, but a year-round destination and home base for both creators and business innovators. And the reason I say home base is what we're seeing going on in the world today. High Point has a unique ability to be able to support the creatives in our industry. And so many of those creatives aren't necessarily based here, but they could be. And so as people are reevaluating where they live and the density and the population where they live, I could see where we may become very enticing to many to be able to be a home base. And so as that develops, I think that, there's a movement in some of the showrooms and others to be open year round, which would be exciting for not just our industry, but for people visiting the town. So I'm really excited to see what's ahead. There's a lot of development going on downtown. If you were to drive down the streets right now, you would see all the construction going on. And even though we are in the middle of a global pandemic, things are still happening in the city, and it's exciting to witness. And we have a few visionaries in town who are helping to fund that so that we can continue to make progress and take giant leaps forward. So I think when we look back, people will think of High Point and the COVID crisis, and they'll say, rather than shying away from what was going on in the world, they leaned into it and they really stepped up. And so I'm excited to see what that future holds for us.
What led you to start High Point Discovered, that blog? The same reasons you just gave to really
Many of the same reasons. I call High Point Discovered, which started out as an Instagram page. It is my love letter to our community, and it has since become our collective love letter. And it's not just my voice anymore. It is the voice of many. And it started because I wanted people to be able to see the High Point that I see, to see it through my eyes, and to see the beauty and the amenities and all the things that we have here in this great city. And that evolved into a blog, which we have just recently recoined our online magazine. and it has just become a nonprofit.
Congratulations.
So thank you very much. That was a big hurdle and one we are very proud of that accomplishment. So I'm very excited about the future of High Point Discovered as well. And that High Point Discovered's mission is to tell the stories of the people who are here in town and really elevate High Point in the eyes of all who behold it.
Well, I'm glad we're giving you an opportunity to tell people where they need to go to find this. And that's good. And they need to learn more about High Point. Speaking of High Point, from a marketing perspective, I wanted to ask this since we sat down today. What, in your opinion, Dawn, makes High Point unique as opposed to any other major market in the home furnishings industry now?
Sure. I'm going to talk about it twofold. I'm going to talk about the market, but I also want to talk about the city as well.
Absolutely.
From the market standpoint, I think that there are a couple of things that, as we work with retailers, designers, design firms, hospitality industry clients, all of those sorts, they look to High Point, even if they have other markets and other availability. High Point is outside of those of us who live and work in High Point. To the outside world, it is this, sort of the shining beacon on the hill kind of thing. And I don't think we always realize that, and I don't think that we always appreciate that. It is something that has been around for, in excess of 100 years. How many types of markets can say that? So that it has evolved and developed and created a real sense of itself. And I think that we've had some, times where we've had to rethink what we were doing and maybe haven't felt quite as strongly positioned. But in the last 10 years, I have seen such a renaissance of both pride and ownership in the market itself and how it's positioned and how people talk about it. That makes me feel so good about it. From the sense of High Point, the city, the community. When I first moved here a long time ago as a young adult, High Point was not the city that I thought I could embrace. I was concerned about it. And through the years, things have developed and progressed, and maybe not as fast as we all thought they were. And there were a lot of naysayers in the community. Oh, we can't have that because High Point doesn't support it. When Christi told me about what she wanted to do with High Point Discovered, I promise you, my first reaction was, would it be just too far over the pale for me to jump over in her lap and kiss her on the cheek? I was blown away because it was something that had been sitting inside of me for so long that what if we could tell the story of the good? I just didn't have the mechanism to do it. And she had just taken on this anonymous, white knight kind of position to be able to do that. And so literally on a plane home from a business trip, I wrote down all of these ideas. Okay, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. And I had about 10 pages when I landed. The next week I handed them to Christi and I said, I think you ought to do it this way.
Which was amazing, by the way.
But here's what I will tell you. Over the course of just 18 to 24 months, that High Point Discovered has been in existence, and this sort of renaissance movement of what's going on across our city, other places are really learning about this. I was in South Carolina, in my hometown, pre this illness late last year, at an event. Most people I didn't know were attending this event, and I ended up being seated next to the head of the Chamber of Commerce. And we got to talking about some things, and he asked about me, and I, mentioned that I lived in High Point, and he said to me, now, this community, and I won't mention which one it is, but I'm very proud of the renaissance that has happened in my hometown too. It has taken years, but they have found their own voice, and it's wonderful, and I'm so happy when I go home. And I have always thought of them as a little bit of a pinnacle of where we could aspire to be in High Point. So this gentleman says to me, "Oh, you're from High Point. I can't believe all the things that are going on there. It's phenomenal." And here was his quote: "If we could ever be like High Point, we would feel like we had really accomplished something."
Wow.
And I went,
Yeah.
"You know what, you're right." And then he asked me some question, and I picked up on something that Christi had told me months ago, had just rolled out of her mouth. He said, "Describe High Point to me, if you had to." And I said, "We're the city of creativity." And literally the other 7 people at the table stopped and went, "That's phenomenal. Tell us about High Point." That's all I had to say, and an entire table of strangers wanted to know about our community.
That's our new byline. Somebody write that one down.
Well,
That's
I've said
great.
we need to trademark that and put it
city of
up.
creativity.
We talk about
Absolutely.
it throughout the blog
yeah.
routinely.
Well, speaking of creativity in the city of High Point, what do you think is next for the city of High Point? What's coming up next? I know, obviously, a lot of buildings. I know one specific one, your complex, you're not building, complex that you're working on, Christi, is the Congdon Yards complex. That's certainly what's next for High Point. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, through the generosity of David Congdon and the Congdon Foundation, High Point has an unbelievably incredible gift in Congdon Yards, which is a multi-building campus. It started with Plant 7, who many in the industry know and love as the old Union Square loft, and there were many market parties and showrooms in that building, and that building is being lovingly restored to its original grandeur and then some. It's an old hosiery mill, over 100 years old, and so the building itself, the architecture is just spectacular. And so they have recently acquired the space adjacent to it. I'm drawing a blank.
It's an old furniture.
Oh,
Yes.
the hosiery mill.
Yes.
The Adams Millis.
Yes, I can't think of the name of it. Anyway, so now there's 2 buildings, and they're doing some studies on potentially more buildings on the campus. But, you know, their thought process is their target is going to be creatives to the creative city, a great nod to the creative city, as well as businesses and the like. So, you know, one of the things that they're going to have is a maker space on the first floor. They're very excited about that. They have partnered with a machinery equiment out of Atlanta, Georgia, I believe.
Yes,
who
one of the best ones in the industry.
Yes,
I understand.
SCM, I understand.
Yep.
And that is apparently, you know, all of the furniture designers and creatives in the city are all drooling to get their hands on this equipment and have
I know
access
one
to
who
it.
is. One of our board members, Taylor West,
Yes.
is he was part and parcel.
Yes,
I think,
he's
one
been
of the
part of
team
this.
members that
He was
that
one of the
together.
team members that put it together. So, yes, everyone is incredibly excited about the makerspace. There's a place called The Commons, which is a wonderful meeting space for everyone. It's just a community space. It has a large conference room and coffee shop and all types of seating so that we could be sitting down to do something like our conversation today, or you could have a meeting, or you could go study, whatever you want to do. And then businesses and other things will be in that building as well. So it's an incredible nod to the Congdon's belief in where we're headed. Going back to what I said about, you know, I firmly believe we're going to be a city full of business innovators and creatives, because that's who we are. That's in our bones.
Dawn?
The thing that I want us to recognize as a city, and I think that we're already doing it, is now that we have kind of put the gas to this both economic and Renaissance engine that we have a lot of other elements of our city that we need to bring along with it. I don't want us to just say, okay, this little small patch or this little small community is going to benefit from this. I think that the conversations now that I am hearing, which are heartening to me, by the city leaders are, how do we bring the entire community along on this really wonderful journey in whatever way that is appropriate for them and for all elements of our community. So I think that for the first time in a very long time, I feel like the city is not just has this what do we do next vision, but what do we do in the big picture and in the long run, and how do we use what we've got now and really propel ourselves into something that everybody who lives here can be proud of.
The big inclusive all of us. Yeah, I totally agree with you. That's well said. Well said. Speaking of inclusion, growth, the future, what's next? The subject I'm going to bring up is women as leaders in our industry. And I think you know a number of them. You are two of them. There are many more. That group is growing rapidly. I'm proud to see that it's happening. Only took a lot of years in this industry. How do we attract more to the business, marketing, and design and more women in a career way into our industry in your fields of endeavor within it? How would you see, what should we do to educate, encourage, and empower young women all over the country to come and find their way in our industry? Any thoughts on that? It's a big subject.
It is. And I do struggle with this one a little bit, only because the design industry in general, interior design specifically, is, the demographic is largely women. Mm-hmm. And so it's not that I don't think that they're there. So I'm processing, how do we get them in leadership roles? How do we get them more involved? Mm-hmm. Because from where I come, my perspective is, I don't really remember the industry not including women, because I have been surrounded by some really strong women through my career. So I'm blessed in that regard. I have those rose-colored glasses on, so to speak. But I do think that, going back to that education component that you mentioned, we're all heavily involved in education and mentoring and speaking. Mm-hmm. And that's where I find that I connect with a lot of these young designers who see someone, as a leader or speaking or whatever the case may be, and start to ask questions. And I know Dawn's very involved with the competition at the Bienenstock Library, as well as a couple of other things. And because of that, I think that we as industry professionals, our best opportunity is with the very young of the profession. So through schools, through professional affiliations, to invite them and take them under our wing. And I think that's going to be our best way to lead them into those positions.
When I started in this industry, there really weren't a lot of women in leadership capacities. Women were in creative fields, mm-hmm. or they were in administrative kinds of roles. And so we've seen a lot of that change, and I want to salute that. I think that that's very important for us to take stock and say, while we may not be exactly where we want to be, we have made huge strides through the years. And much of that has been organically created. When I was first in the industry, it really primarily was more family-owned manufacturing businesses. Let's talk about on the manufacturing side for a mm-hmm. second. And so it was almost a legacy that was passed down from father to son or uncle to nephew or, mm-hmm. extended family. And so there wasn't really a place for women, especially who were outside of those family units, to make their way into it. Just like in some ways there weren't a lot of opportunities for men to come from outside another industry unless they came through sales and that sort of thing, and then worked their way up. But what I am seeing is that there is a much more relaxed, and by relaxed, I mean opportunities where things are more open for women to take leadership roles now, and for it not to be considered an anomaly, mm-hmm. that it's looking for the best leader, the best executive, the best C-suite person that they can find. For a lot of years, we hammered on the fact that women, by, a large margin, purchase more of our product than men do. And that we should, as women, be seen as leaders because of that. And I think it has taken some time. I think that's absolutely the case. But I also think that it has taken a little bit of time for women to find their footing in a lot of other industry avenues that weren't traditionally women's roles, logistics and production and, supply chain and all of those sorts of things that now, if there are women coming through college and they're looking at those kinds of things, then yes, I think to Christi's point, we absolutely should be in there talking about how this is a viable and really elegant business to be in, and that it's collaborative and it's not overly competitive in terms of the sort of cutthroat competition that I experienced in other businesses before, and that it's a really, really good chance to spread your wings, to become a leader, to impact a business, and to impact an industry. So that's where I'm coming from.
Awesome. Well said, both of you. Thank you very much for that input, and I hope our listeners take that to heart. And we want you. Come to the furniture industry and find your career path. We'd love to have you here. Couple of quick things. One, I'm going to ask you, this is the fun part here. There's been a lot of fun, but this particular one, talk about dropping a bomb. Your greatest success, and I'm going to use the term, in your greatest learning experience, as opposed to failure. If you got a couple of those that you might be able to think or let us know a little bit about, that might be interesting also for our listeners and viewers. I can't imagine what's occurring in your head right now, but I can also tell you wouldn't believe some of the stories we've heard over the years in Design Between the Lines. So feel free. Greatest success, start with that. If there's a greatest learning experience, throw that one out too.
That is quite the bomb. Let's see. Starting with greatest success, I would say, building the business that we have built. When I started, I had no intentions of building a company. I started out of circumstances that made me want to go out on my own and kind of machete my own path, to use Dawn's words. And it has slowly and in a very baby step kind of mentality grown to a really wonderful team of 12 and, with an incredible culture and people that I absolutely adore and love to work with every day. So for me, in a professional role, that is my greatest success, aside, of course, from my children and some of the other personal attributes that I hold dear to my heart. And then the second one would be the birth of High Point Discovered, because that is something that, as Dawn said, is, I think it's deep inside of a lot of us, those of us especially who are from here or have spent a lot of time here. We all love this city, and I think especially in this industry, we view it differently than maybe some of the locals that don't see the beauty of our industry. And so that's been incredibly rewarding as well.
I think on the success side, it's not just one thing. Pride is not something that you're supposed to have, but I have a great deal of pride when someone comes to us as a company and says, we've heard about you in the industry. We know that you're the ones to come to if we want to get from A to Z. We've seen what you've done and we want you to do this for us. I walk away feeling incredibly grateful. And there is a little bit of pride. Yes, I can't say that there's not. There's a little bit of pride involved there. I have also had personally some glorious failures. One that comes to mind was outside of this industry, but very much in the last episode, we had touched on it at the beginning, so we'll come back around on this. prior to my time in home furnishings, I worked in a different industry. And the leader of the organization that I worked with was very, very talented, but due to a particular circumstance, this leader had to step away from the leadership role for several months, and I was asked to step into that leadership role. And my goal at that point was not only to continue to do what this leader had done so that when he and or she came back, they would be pleased with where things had happened, but I said to myself, all right, let's see if we can't propel this even further and have even more success and be better than what it was, so that when this person comes back, they're going to go, this was fabulous, and they've got an easy reentry back into it. So I worked my hind end off and did a lot of things and got some attention for it, and I was pleased and proud again of that attention, and really had people talking about this business and this whole industry that I was in. Well, when this leader came back, that person took it very differently than I had intended it, because this was a very competitive industry, and I was then seen as trying to take over this person's role. Ultimately, I got fired for it, and fired for a very specific reason that was no reason whatsoever except the insecurity of this person. And ultimately, I was able to sort of prove that the reason that I was dismissed was completely unfounded to the corporate leaders. And I was actually asked, the person the leader that I was subbing for got dismissed, and I was asked to come back at that point, and I took a polite no thank you. But what it said to me was, internally, I don't want to be in an industry where it's so cutthroat and it's so me against the world. I want to be in a place of collaboration and people uplifting each other. And I found the home furnishings industry, and it has been that way. So I've been very pleased about that.
Well, that brings me to the perfect question after that, and that would be your advice to students and young professionals seeking this industry as a place to come. Is there any particular word of advice you might give that listener or viewer from your perspective? A little word of advice, something not to forget when they're.
Well, I would say in the design world, definitely train with someone whom you admire, and really take to heart what they show and teach you. Be humble and be kind. I think that will get you far in this life. And so, those are the things, just larger topics, I would say, in terms of advice. How about you, Dawn?
Having spent a lot of time working with students through some of the scholarship programs that we've been a part of for the industry, I think that what they really need is to see that home furnishings is a place where they can spread their wings. They can be challenged, and they can also challenge us. We are not known as probably the most forward-thinking industry in the world, but we can be. And I would love to see some of these young people who come into our industry say, excuse me, I'm raising my hand, and I think there's a new and different and better way to do this. So if you have a little bit of moxie and some ideas of your own, I would love to see you come in this industry.
Absolutely. I think that's great for interns to do. One of my favorite things about interns is if they can do a project, not necessarily a design project, but a project where they come in and teach you something. So they are put on the spot. It teaches them presentation skills. It teaches them preparation. It teaches them how to prepare and be able to teach in terms of new ideas. And so I think that that's a great way to be able to help those students spread their wings a little bit.
Well, on that note, I have to say our time is up, but I thank you both for your expertise, your knowledge, and the fun that we had during these conversations, these last 2 episodes. Thank you so much for being on Design Between the Lines.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Design Between the Lines is produced by Element Studio with the International Society of Furniture Designers. We record in High Point, North Carolina. To find videos of these podcasts, be sure to subscribe to the International Society of Furniture Designers YouTube channel. To learn more about ISFD, visit isfd.org. And don't forget to subscribe to hear more industry stories of Design Between the Lines.